It was unlocked before, actually. There you go. Just pull.
How far?
About halfway.
You're waiting.
Yeah.
One of them is me.
All right. According to this, I am live. So pop on in.
Okay.
Hello, folks.
Okay, we're new.
Check in if you can hear.
There you are.
So hello, folks. Check in if you can hear me. 3 thumbs up already. I feel so excited.
I can hear you.
Hi, everyone. 3 thumbs up already. I feel so excited. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to need you to mute yours, Katrina.
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to need... There you go. Ooh, 4 people watching. Hi, 4 people watching. I'm very organized today, so just give me a moment. My iPad managed to lock itself out, so I'm desperately trying to get the book on here so I don't have to try and read it off my phone, because we all know what that looks like. It's just not pretty. So give me a second, and we'll just wait to see if a few more people come on. Leo's here. Hi, Leo. Leo, for those who are on and don't know, is the one who blurbed my book. And thank you so much, Leo. That was a wonderful blurb. I really appreciated it. Now let's see if we can make this sucker work for us. I'm going to be doing a few things and stomping on my computer, so everyone just smile and, have a drink and talk to each other.
Oh.
I just have to update the library on my book, on my iPad, to see if it will let me bring the new book in. If not, we'll do something else.
One watching right now.
One watching right now. So that's Leo?
That would be Leo and me.
Oh, so 2 watching. And Leo says hello back. My books, top charts, top posters, purchased. Let's see if we can do this way. La 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 la. This is taking too long. I actually have a schedule for this whole thing. So this first part is where we all talk gently amongst ourselves and enjoy each other's company while I desperately try to get things organized, as is my wont. Let's see. So this is interesting. Hang on a second. Some days you're organized. Some days organized is you. Does that make any sense whatsoever? No, I don't think so.
Usually, when we get from time, it says a couple weeks in advance, and then really there's a lot of this right here. Figure stuff. It's reading. What it's going to do for giveaways. This is much less spiritual. This is much more spiritual. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, if only 40 minutes ago, you were cooking up some amazing steaks. This is true. They were amazing steaks. And I'm very pleased to say my mom is here. And those of you who have actually looked at the book will know that it is dedicated to my mom. So yay. Hey. Mom did not know that? Oh, well, maybe I'll let her have a copy for free then, since she, paid for the art basically. So thank you so much for that, Mom. Really appreciate it. Let's see who else we got. Got those 2, and I'm just again playing with the iPad and talk amongst yourself. Leo, how are you doing? What's new and exciting? Leo's not answering me. Here we go. Just gonna turn up the sound a bit. How's the mic on this? Looking good? Okay, I'm gonna turn up the mic a bit, I think.
So, because I'm not hearing.
Didn't you turn yours off?
I think I did.
Ah.
There.
That's why you're not hearing me. Okay. That's why you're not hearing me. Tips. Let's try this. So what I'm trying to do now is download the book onto my iPad. Oh, waiting for the big Hollywood movie deal. You and me both, Leo. I think, and I think we both know that we deserve it, right? Sign in my little book. So what I'm doing now is I'm signing into my email on my iPad so I can email myself my book on my iPad and then put the book up on there. Yes, it's a very simple thing, really. And now I got to find my password for my Yahoo account, which requires me to search on my computer. So give me a second for that to work out. Everything seems to be running a little slow tonight. My computer seems to have frozen for me. How's it for everyone else out there? Is it okay? Oh, Miles is here. Hi, Miles. How you doing?
Hey, Miles.
How's life treating you? All good? Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. As I was just explaining to all and sundry, I'm having a little bit of an issue with my iPad, so I'm just hoping that very shortly oh my Lord. I use one of those really complicated passwords. Everyone tried not to laugh at. You got the book today. Thank you, Miles. That's great. Have you already read it or are you only partway through? V. G. You know what? This is going to take far more effort than it's worth, so I'm going to read this thing off of the computer, and that way we'll all just you'll get a close-up of my face while I'm reading the book to you, and it'll all be very, very pretty. You just started reading it? Excellent. Well, for the readings tonight, I'm going to do the first and second chapters, I think, depending on how much time and how many people we've got and how much interest there is. Is my backpack kicking around the house somewhere nearby? Would you be so kind as to pass that?
That is mine. Oh.
Mine's the gray one, the gray and black one. Oh, I managed to bury it under everything. That's okay. I don't need those. I just need this notebook here because this notebook here,
Excuse me.
My very flashy red notebook, has the schedule for the book launch, so that I wrote out to remind myself what the heck I am doing. There it is. And we're at about 7:08, so it's going pretty good so far. I'm going to do the reading in about 5-10 minutes or so. I'd like to take a moment to draw everyone's attention to the absolutely lovely Christmas tree to my right, your left. This is the result of our building not allowing live trees inside our no plan survives engagement. So very true, isn't it? No, our wee Christmas tree, or as my wife refers to it, our evergreen house plant with decorations on it, in that tone too, is the result of our building not allowing live plants. Or not allowing us to have a proper tree. You can only have artificial trees. And rather than doing that, we decided to take one of our live plants, do a little decorating, put a beautiful star on it, and make it, a sunshiny, happy tree for all of us. Because who doesn't like a sunshiny, happy tree after all? I'm going to pop up the book here. There we go. I'll start reading it now. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, events or locales is entirely coincidental. There we are. So wasn't that an exciting first reading? Oops. So pop that up. So now, don't have any prizes to give away this time, unfortunately, because I kind of gave away all the last two. But what I did promise, for those of you who read the invitation, is I will honestly answer any question asked of me on whatever subject, provided it does not infringe on someone else's privacy. So line up your questions, give me your best, give me your worst, and I'll do my finest to answer it. I can see Katrina is, thinking things already. It's slightly terrifying. My mother's got that grin on her face that suggests that this may be the largest mistake I've made since I first thought, hey, I want to be an actor. What about your privacy? I have no privacy. I'm a public figure, don't you know? I'm an author. I'm an actor. I'm a fight director. Occasionally I make money consulting. So I, as a public figure, have no privacy whatsoever, and therefore will give it all up. There may be limitations on this, but we'll see how deep you all go. For one thing, cannot comment on the shape of my heart because I have not actually opened my chest and looked yet, and I'm not up for that tonight, guys. It's Christmas. I just don't want to make a mess on the floor. All right. So it's 10 after. We're going to give it about 5 more minutes. Now, important question. Have you thought what holidays exist in Abbott's world? Okay, I will start answering questions after the first reading, but that is a good question, and I will answer that in a bit. So yes, so get yourself a beverage if you haven't got one yet. I realized that I do not have a beverage on me. Oh, someone very important to me has pointed out where 2 people, yes, I saw the first point, have pointed out where my beverage is. So excuse me while I grab my glass. You see, I use the most expensive red wine glasses for my, it's right here, it's red wine. Though I was going to go get myself a proper wine glass and a fresh glass of wine, he says, blinking at his wife, who can't reach the glasses.
Would you like the blue goblet?
Ooh, should I do the blue goblet?
The fancy blue goblet.
Pardon me.
Could you pass that out, please? Whoops. Thank you.
Yep.
Still intact.
So this is the leftover of last week's wine. We're just finishing it off. We did steaks with a really nice mustard wine sauce tonight, which I highly recommend if anyone wants it. I will happily give the recipe if someone asks for it. So I'm just going to polish this off, quickish, and try not to be too sozzled by the time I read. Oh, that's a nice one. I forget what brand it is, but it's a very nice one. It's getting a bit oxidized. It's a Vinland.
It's a Vinland Cabernet Franc.
A Vinland Cabernet Franc. It's getting a little oxidized right now. But over here, in the famous household blue goblet, I show it to you all so you can see how blue it actually is the new vintage, which smells lovely and which I will drink after I finish off this one. And I may drink quickly depending on how many folks actually show up at this thing. If we suddenly get 200 people at the meeting, I may need a quick fixer-upper. I'm going to, shall I adjust the screen a bit so you see a bit more of me and a bit more less of the lights, or do you like the light display? Anyone?
Looks nice.
My mom says it looks nice.
Uncle Katrina's computer looks really good.
Now, Katie Brisky was sent her regards. She's not going to be able to visit our stream tonight. As you all know, Katie is a wonderful author, and she's not here this evening because she is practicing with her choir for caroling season, which we know is coming upon us hard and fast. You love the book shows? Excellent, Richard, and welcome, Richard. You went away from amateur acting to writing? Yeah, I went away from professional acting to writing, and I must say I only occasionally regret it. Because and welcome, Richard. Thanks for joining the stream. Yeah, I did the professional actor thing for about 15, 20 years. I still do bits and pieces every now and then. I actually just did a 48-hour film challenge. And anyone who doesn't know what that is basically a contest that runs around the world in all different cities, and you have 48 hours to write, direct, produce, edit, and send out a 4 to 7 minute short film. And we did quite a nice job this year. Now, I was very fortunate. Our director is a gentleman named Alexander Gallant, who works in the industry and is currently working on Chucky, and as I think as a script supervisor. Although don't quote me on that, I'm not sure. But he called his friends in the industry, so we had some really great professional people to help make our little film look really good. I think I got 2 hours sleep that weekend. And considering I had to drive from Toronto to Kitchener and back, which is about 2 hours, it was a real interesting drive the second time back.
2 on each night.
And that's right, 2 hours of sleep each night, Katrina tells me. So yay! Also, I had a very small part in the film, so I may well have napped during the actual filming, not when I was on screen. but I did help write it, and my friend Tammy was in it. She's an amazing actor. Alexander Gallant's daughter Cynthia is in it. She's a young actor and working her way up to having a pretty good career. We're hoping is if she keeps on in it, if she likes. She's just finishing high school now. She was amazing in it. I'm sad to say I don't remember the other woman's name. She was also great. We have these three women doing a really wonderful, wonderful job in the cast. So that was a great deal of fun. It is now 7:15, and I promised myself that 7:15 would be the first time I would read from the book. So, without any further ado, okay, this is how you can tell it's always an actor drinking wine. Everyone else does this. But as an actor, you know that you must turn yourself sideways so that everyone can see the product. Drink it and go, to show how wonderful the product is. So, without any further ado, I'm going to lean a little closer to the screen, and I'm going to pull up the actual books since it has decided not to work on my iPad. So just give me a second here to make this purdy-like so I can see your questions, answers, and all the other wonderful things that may or may not occur here. And we're going to zip through. And I'm going to read. So everyone, have your drink, he says, getting his other glass of wine. Make yourselves comfy. And to use the very, very old line, are you seated comfortably?
Yes. Yes.
Then we'll begin. I should get dressed, Abwith thought. But she stayed where she sat, cross-legged in the oversized wooden chair she'd found while chasing a miscreation through an alley on Abraniatok's third tier. The chair was scratched and worn, but it was solid and free. So Abwith hauled it across the city to her room over Captain Marfolio's coach house and set it in front of the iron wood stove. And now she sat in it, wrapped in a thick wool blanket over her nightdress, staring at the pounding rain outside her window, while the tabby that claimed the coach house as its own lay curled up before the stove, asleep and content. Abwith envied it. Even with the wood stove and the blanket, she still felt chilly. In winter, ocean storms swept the great city of Abraniatok, bringing either sheets of rain that drove sideways through the streets or deluges that pounded straight down. Sometimes the rain lightened to a drizzle, but it never stopped, leaving the city wet and miserable. Nothing dried, not the air, not her blankets, and not her clothes. Abwith now hung her next day's outfit before the wood stove every evening to make sure it was warm and damp instead of cold and damp when she put it on the next morning. It hung there now, waiting for her to slip into the clammy fabric. Instead, Abwith sat and stared at the rain, desperately wishing she could go home for the Festival of Magic. The festival bridged the darkest days of winter. It began the last 9th day of Griffidley, last month of the year, named for Griffid, god of god of death and winter. It ended on the first 9th day of Crethley, when Creth, goddess of night and magic, took over the new year. Magicians strived to see who produced the best magical display. Magical toys and games abounded. Every year since she grew old enough to walk, Abwith took part in the festival in her hometown. There, it snowed more often than not. Abwith suspected her aunt, a powerful magician, had something to do with that, though the woman never admitted it. Abwith had performed in the pageants as a child. As she grew older, she served at the temple and worked the family booth, serving mulled wines to patrons. She even assisted her aunt in organizing the magical performances. But this year, for the first time, Abwith was alone for the Festival of Magic, stuck in a cold, damp apartment, staring out the window at the pouring rain. A knock on the coach house door startled her out of her thoughts. It wasn't Captain Marfolio. He knocked louder, usually to summon her to hunt miscreations. That meant it was Marfolio's daughter, Tararosh, no doubt bored with the weather and come to talk. Abwith considered ignoring her, but Tararosh was not the sort to stop knocking because no one answered. Oh, thank you, Miles. And as if to prove it, she knocked again, even louder. Abwith rose from her chair and padded barefoot across the wooden floor and down the stairs. She opened the door and found Lysareth, her girlfriend, wrapped in a long wool coat and a waxed leather cloak. Oh, thank the gods, Lysareth said. When you were at temple, I got worried. Liz, Aberwith couldn't find words. I wasn't expecting. Can I come in? What? Aberwith shook her head, trying to get her brains moving again. Of course. Lythris stepped inside and threw back the hood, sending a spray of raindrops against the door behind her. She heaved a sigh of relief. I'd rather be up to my knees in snow. This weather is awful. Are you sick? What? No, I'm not sick. I was just... Her words dried up in her mouth. Aberwith stared at her feet, feeling pathetic. Let's go to the festival, Lythris said. Since we're not at Temple, we can get there before it gets too crowded. I don't... Aberwith? Lythris' hand landed on her shoulder, startling her. Lythris put on a smile, which didn't hide the worry in her eyes. Braniatok has the world's biggest festival of magic. I want to go with you. Oh. Lythris waited, and when nothing more came, a small frown turned down her lips. Do you not want to go? It's not that, Aberwith protested. I'm just homesick, she wanted to say, but the words wouldn't come. She settled on, I'm not dressed. Then get dressed and let's go. Now Lythris' smile returned, and a teasing note came into her voice. Do you want help? Aberwith's face warmed, which was ridiculous. It wasn't as if Lythris hadn't seen her naked. They'd bathed together as nice initiates, and Lythris once washed the blood off Aberwith when she'd been in shock from the murders she'd witnessed. But all that was before they started dating. Besides, bathing together and having Lythris in her apartment while she changed were two very different things. Which was stupid, Aberwith knew, but even so, no, I'll dress myself. I'll wait here then, Lythris said, the teasing note gone from her voice. Aberwith's underwear and breastcloth were dry, at least, but her skin crawled at the touch of her damp shirt and breeches. She shuddered as she put them on, and added a sweater before pulling on her jacket, cloak, and boots, all waxed against the continuous rains. She looked out the window and wished for snow, which sent another wave of homesickness over her. Stop it, Aberwith told herself firmly. Your girlfriend wants to take you to the Festival of Magic, so stop whining and go. Aberwith's room was a long walk from Braniatok's Great Market Square, and the pounding rain made it longer. It was a deluge day, at least, so the rain only drove down on them instead of blowing in their faces and blinding them. And despite the sopping wet, Lythris reached out and caught Aberwith's hand, interlacing their fingers. Lythris pulled her forward, her long legs eating up the distance. Aberwith grimaced at Lythris' enthusiasm, but increased her own pace. Hand in hand, they went down the steps from the second level and through the streets. The rain had deterred no one from visiting the festival, it seemed, and the closer they came, the greater the number of people around them. Everyone laughed and chatted despite the pounding rain. A half hour after they started, Lythris pointed ahead, her voice filling with excitement. There, you see? Aberwith peered through the driving rain and spotted a golden glow. I think so. The light grew brighter, reflecting off the raindrops. They drew closer and saw a line of shining gold runes inscribed on the cobbles where the thoroughfare opened into the market square. Everyone stepped over it instead of on it, and almost everyone paused on the other side, causing the crowd behind them to bunch together. Aberwith wondered at it until she and Lythris reached the golden runes and stepped over them and emerged dry into the bright, people-filled square. The shock of it yanked Aberwith out of her funk. Not a drop of water was left on her body. She looked up and saw the magic shield covering the festival. No rain penetrated it, and it shone with a light as bright as a summer afternoon. Even the temperature was perfect, cool enough that her winter coat and cloak were comfortable, but not so cool as her hands felt cold. It wasn't until a young woman wearing a student mage's gray robe said, "Please step forward," that Aberwith realized they'd stop. Lythris grinned and tugged on Aberwith's hand, pulling them into a realm of wonders. 6 small stages and 1 large surrounded the square, and on each magicians displayed their skill. To their left, a woman created giant bubbles of swirling color that morphed and danced. On their right, a man played with tubs of mud. At his command, the contents rose and walked, taking the shape of audience members, or leaped and doused him head to foot, only to jump away, leaving him unsullied. The other performers were out of Aberwith's sight, but flashes of light and sound and ghostly shapes filled the air near the other stages. Displays set up around the square showed how Braniatok embraced magic. food stalls all over the square were doing a brisk business, their smells reminding Aberwith that she had not eaten since the night before. And straight ahead, glowing bright in every color of the rainbow and echoing with a cacophony of sounds, was the maze of merchant booths. Lisrith brought them both baked pastries filled with fish and root vegetables, steaming hot and wrapped in paper. The two women blew on them and took small bites as they walked. With each bite, Aberwith's mood lifted further, and by the time they'd reached the displays, her homesickness had retreated to a mild melancholy. They walked together between lines of paintings showing the city's magical history. The closest showed men and women in formal robes, and a young magician standing beside them explained that these were the many masters that came from Abraniatok. The next set of paintings showed magicians saving the city from avalanches and the fishing fleet from storms and using magic to bring up water the year the wells dried. A third set showed the knights of the exculpatory order in battle against various miscreations, including one hilarious picture of knights battling Snellgrum, a steel-eating mode that corroded metal in moments. "Is that Curiamillo?" Lisrith asked, pointing at a knight, pictured only striped drawers, lighting a suit of armor on fire. "It happened 50 years ago," a student magician standing beside the painting said, "so I don't think so." "Looks like something he'd wear," Lisrith snickered. She looked past the painting, and her eyes grew wide. "Holy gods!" Aberwith followed her gaze. A dark wood statue of a woman stood in the center of a roped-off square, with a knight in full armor at each corner. Her carved robes appeared to swirl around her legs, and in one upraised arm she held a black scepter tipped with a dark red stone and intricately carved runes running its length. Aberwith spotted the symbols for calling lightning, fire, wind, and ice, and others for defense against the same things. "It's the scepter of Elbinatath," Lisrith whispered in an odd whisper. Lisrith said in an odd whisper. "It's the knight's greatest treasure, captured 200 years ago from the forces of Sluk. This is what happens when you make up your names on the spot. Slukalanatok, and wielded only 3 times since then because it's so powerful. I can't believe they're displaying it." "Lisrith," called the knight standing closest to them. "Is that Aberwith with you?" "Yes, Kier Rosalith," Lisrith said. Knight Captain Rosalith, who taught magic to the knight initiates, pushed up her visor and smiled at them. "Enjoying the festival?" "So far, yes. Are you on guard duty?" "Every year," Rosalith grinned, "in case you worried that our job wasn't glamorous enough." "Aberwith, how is being a stalker treating you?" "Well, thank you," Aberwith said. "I assume Lisrith treats you well, too?" Rosalith laughed as Lisrith ducked her head and looked away. "Have fun, the pair of you. Lisrith, I'll see you on first day." "Yes, Kier." Lisrith tugged Aberwith's hand, leading them away. A wave of guilt hit Aberwith then, as she realized that between the rain and her mood, she'd not spoken 10 words to Lisrith since they'd arrived. She looked for something to say, but before she could find it, Lisrith led her into the merchant maze, and all Aberwith's senses overloaded. Delicate, delightful perfumes floated in the air. Music filled their ears. Snatches of familiar, comforting songs and joyful, spirit-lifting melodies wove through gentle, relaxing chants with a rhythm that stole their tension away. Standing near one booth set their skin tingling. Near another, their muscles relaxed. And beside a third, their hair stood on end. One booth offered mirrors that showed the back of your head on command. Another boasted tea that soothed the mind, body, and spirit. A dozen displayed flying, flying, or swimming toys. One sold 9-inch tall homunculi that dusted and swept on command. Another had delicate glass messenger birds they claimed were stronger than any steel. Booths with magical knives designed to carve the toughest meat stood beside miniature fountains whose waters danced when the music played, spraying and swirling in the constant stream of sound. Lisrith stopped and pointed. "Finder rings!" Aberwith followed her finger to a booth where paired rings sat in neat rows. They were gold and silver, pewter and copper, and each with an arrow on their top. The woman behind the counter glanced at their interlaced fingers and smiled. "Come here, my lovelies, and try my rings," she said, extending a pair of silver rings. "Wear them, and you will never lose each other, no matter how large the crowd or great the distance. Just put it on your finger, hold it to your lips, and say the name of your beloved. The arrow on the ring will point to them." Beloved? From somewhere deep in Abuith's mind came the thought that though they'd been seeing each other for months, now neither had uttered the phrase, I love you. Lisrith picked up the rings and pressed one into Abuith's hand, then slipped the other ring on her finger, a shy smile forming on her lips. She raised the ring to her mouth and whispered, Abuith's bemused, overstimulated brain kicked into full panic mode. Stop! Her shout echoed through the booths, freezing Lisrith in place. People around them looked, saw the rings, and the women staring at each other, and turned away, deciding that whatever relationship drama was occurring was not their concern. Abuith didn't care. If Liz says my name, and I say hers, and it works for her, and it doesn't work for me, she'll think... Lisrith's expression went from confused to crestfallen. Abuith's heart twisted. Lisrith took a shaky breath and began saying, I'm sorry, it isn't you, Liz, it's... Abuith stopped, realizing that what she almost said was not at all what she meant. Abuith handed the ring back to the woman in the booth, who took it with open hands and mouth. I'm sorry. Lisrith turned on her heel. I need to get out of here. Her thoughts whirled as she headed for the nearest exit. Lisrith had almost declared Abuith her beloved. Abuith liked Lisrith. Really liked her. But she never called anyone her beloved. Worse, trying to use the magic rings would have been a complete disaster no matter what she felt. She kept going, hoping Lisrith was following her, but not daring to turn and see the expression on Lisrith's face. Abuith broke free of the maze and found herself before the big stage. It was 40 feet across, with 20-foot curtains forming the sides and back, and a skirt curtain running the length of its front. Only a small crowd stood before it this early in the day, but they applauded and cheered as two women spun in the air above the stage, their loose-legged trousers and wide-sleeve shirts creating flowing lines of fabric that dazzled the eye. Abuith stumbled forward, her legs moving of their own accord. Abuith? Lisrith's voice, filled with worry, underlaid with fear, broke into Abuith's thoughts. Are you all right? Abuith breathed a sigh of relief. She followed me. I just... What if Lisrith likes me more than I like Lisrith? What if Lisrith isn't my beloved? What if she is? What do I do if she says it first? Lisrith's feet shuffled on the cobbles. I didn't mean to make you... Stop, please, Abuith said. Liz, let me... The Felith sisters, a young woman in a gray magician's robe called as she stepped out from the side curtains. Her words brought another round of applause. The woman bowed once more, landed, and left the stage. One more performance, then we break for an hour. From the great magical city, Pagondahok, I present one who makes you see what is not there, hear what makes no sound, and believe what is impossible, the master illusionist Crondicaro! Thank you. We'll watch him, Abuith declared, still not able to look at Lisrith's face. We'll watch him so I can get my thoughts together. After he finishes, we'll talk. I promise. A tall man with long, dark, wavy hair worn loose and a light brown, clean-shaven face strode forward. His red robes sparkled. His black breeches absorbed light like a void, and his black boots shone with polish. The world holds many sorts of magic, he said, his voice booming over the audience. He raised his wand, and it glowed gold. 8 more people in magician's robes appeared beside him, making the crowd gasp. Some work with the elements, Crondicaro continued, and 4 magicians stepped forward, with earth, air, fire, and water. As Crondicaro named each one, a magician moved. The first raised a pillar of stone. The second spun winds that twisted and danced as columns of leaves around it. The third waved their hand, and the leaves burst into flame, and the fourth lifted their arm high, and a fountain of water leapt from the pillar, dousing the flames, but never touching the ground. The crowd applauded, and Abuith stole a glance at Lisrith. The other woman stared at the stage and looked like her heart was breaking. Abuith cursed herself, desperate to find the words to fix it. Other magicians fly, Crondicaro continued, or enchant a sword, or raise crops from the earth, from dry earth. A magician may even create a monster to terrify their enemies. As he spoke his words, the illusionary magicians showed each skill. The last magician circled their arms, and before them rose a long serpentine creature with dark red scales, glowing orange eyes, and wings that spread as wide as the stage. It sent a stream of flame over the audience, and then faded away. But among the magical arts, he continued, one is the most beautiful. Roses sprouted from the ground, red and yellow, their heavy aroma filling the audience's nose. The most delightful butterflies rose from every flower, dancing in the air. And the most ephemeral, the butterflies and flowers vanished in sparkling dust. Grondacaro grinned. I cannot create anything new, nor can I change the fabric of reality, but for a little while you will believe that I have. He spread his arm wide. I shall fill your eyes with sight and your ears with sound that do not exist. Bring your sweetest dreams and most terrible nightmares to life, only to make them vanish into nothing. For you, The curtains behind Grondacaro billowed apart. The magician spun and for one moment confronted a giant beast that reared up behind him, twice as tall as a man is 4 times as wide. It raised his forelegs, revealing huge paws tipped with claws glowing half as long as a man's forearm. Lightning ran over its red fur, and two glowing green eyes peered from its enormous head. It roared, its wide-open mouth widening to showing sharp teeth far more terrifying than the illusionary dragon. Then, moving so fast it blurred, the creature brought its head down over the illusionist and snapped its jaws shut, biting the man in half. Oh, look, that's the end of our chapter. So that's chapter 1, in case you haven't read it to this point. Now, 4 people on. So hi, everyone. How are we doing? Everyone enjoy the reading? Give me a yes, a no, a maybe. I think you might be being a tad overdramatic in your presentation, Mr. Buchanan. Whatever you like. Yes, thank you, Miles. Someone likes me. You like me. You really like me. Sally Fields, but what was the name of the movie? 2 points. Love the dramatic. Yes, thank you, Miles. So, that's our first reading of the night. We're going to take a brief pause while I, sip some wine and claim to not be drunk at all. And the next thing I have on is the first Q&A. Good stuff. Thank you, Leo. So the first Q&A, and I hope you've all thought up your various questions and answers. I already see we have 1 in the queue. Well, 2, if we include Miles' no red wine, but we've already answered that because, book requires red wine. And I'm going to put it down for a while so I don't continue sipping it and end up, soused before I attempt a second reading. Wow, that reading went for like 22 minutes. I do talk when I get going, don't I? All right, so questions and answer. Here's the rules of the game. You can ask whatever you like on any topic you like, and I will do my best to answer it honestly. We already have at least 1 question. Let me just quickly go back over the chat and see what we've got. Hollywood D. No red wine? Why, yes, there was red wine, Miles. Thank you. But more importantly, Katrina asks, have you thought what other holidays exist in Abowith's world? And I have thought of some of them because every culture in our world, and every culture I think in fantasy world, especially one that's evolving its way out of the Middle Ages as ours is, it's now into actually more past the Renaissance, starting to an early industrial age, has holidays based around the sun, the moon, all these things, right? So obviously there's the summer solstice, the winter solstice, which is where we set our festival of magic from the darkest days to the beginning of the light. Halfway through the darkness is the quote. And if you can tell me which TV show that is from, I will give you what will I give you? I will give you a happy cookie. It's imaginary. Here it is. It's yummy. Very good.
I'm eliminated from this, aren't I?
You are eliminated from this, Katrina, because you already know. You watched it with me. Halfway through the darkness. So we have our summer solstice, our winter solstice, our spring equinox, our fall equinox. It definitely feels like the sort of place where you'd have a nice harvest festival, of course. You definitely have your spring planting festivals and all the joyous paganism that goes with that, because we are looking at a I have a word for it, and it's not polyamory, it's polytheistic. Don't know if there's polyamory in the society, but I haven't said there isn't, so we'll see what goes with that. But we are in a polytheistic society, so we have the various gods. There are 9 major gods, which is why the week is a 9th day. And in my book of notes on it, you have a note that you get, everyone gets 9th day off because that's sort of the day of the big god. And then you get an extra day off a week, depending on which god you worship or, what your job is. In Abowit's case, it's, yeah, right, you get time off. Because, of course, the stalkers are always on call to, save us from the miscreations, the good, the bad, the ugly, the confused, what have you, right? So come on, guys, hit me up. Any question at all? What about my privacy? I have none. I already answered that. Red wine answered that. Give me something. Leo, ask me something stunningly interesting. We're all looking at you, Leo. Mom, you're allowed to ask questions too. My mother's got that look on her face and says, oh, God, I have to talk to him now.
Where did you get that wonderful imagination?
Gosh, this is the point. My mother has asked me, where did you get that wonderful imagination with that parental look on his face? Now, we all know this one. This is the I'm fishing for the fact that it came from me look. It was me. Yes, Mother, it was you.
It was your long-lost relative, Charles Dickens.
Well, in fact, it was the long loss. Could you take Abowith in a sparring match? It depends.
No.
Well, first of all, I outweigh Abowith by about, right now, probably about 50, 60 pounds at least. So if we're going straight punchy kicky, I think I would win just based on weight, but she is about years younger than me. Okay, she's actually years younger than me. So she's younger, she's faster. She is properly trained in fighting with swords, with pistols, with wrestling. So if she gets me to the ground, she might just win the fight. But I am big, so if I can fall on her from a great height, I expect I will, in fact, flatten her.
She's also really driven.
Yes, Katrina points out that she's also really driven, and yes, she is. She's our go-getter girl who, didn't manage to become a knight, but is doing her best to be the best assistant stalker she can be, and is having fun with it. Excellent question, Leo. Miles, do you have a question for me? Or Richard, do you have a question for me? There is no question too silly, no question too serious, no question too personal, no question too impersonal. What is my opinion of the World Cup? No one asked. I didn't watch it. This, of course, makes me a sinner in Toronto, where we can even now hear people honking up and down the street playing Argentinian music as they cheer their team on. What else have we got from you? Anything? Anyone? Bueller? Has anyone seen Bueller? I think he's 6, huh? So how's everyone's holiday seasons going? Has everyone got some time off over the holidays? I, of course, being a writer, have all the time off in the world. It's called unemployment.
Ooh.
What's the pitch line on the next book? And can an author actually make a living income? Now, Leo has actually put me more on the spot than Miles, because I don't think I've written the pitch line for the next book. But I can give you a brief précis of the plot. It is spring in a Braniotok, and the stalker, and just as the knight initiates, including Lizareth, are graduating to become squires, there comes a messenger racing into the citadel at the top of the city, announcing that there has been a major miscreation attack on a village several days away. And our heroes must charge across overnight to reach the village and try and stop the miscreations from killing everyone. And they're really nasty miscreations too. I'm really proud of these ones. They're giant. And this is, by the way, given away in about the first 10 pages of the book, so I'm not giving anything away. They are giant black scorpion miscreations that crawl up your back, latch their claws into their shoulder blades, and drive their stinger into the back of your skull, turning you into a rabid killing machine. And you just go around hacking people to pieces, and there's all sorts of history with that. Can an author actually make a living income?
Sometimes.
Yes, they can. The second half of the question is, am I one of them? And the answer is, working on it. Making a living income as an author requires several things. The first is having an income to begin with. I remember local hero Ed Mervish, who, of course, used to own Mervish Village and the big discount store. Ed's what did they call it? Ed's place. always said that the way to become a millionaire in the theater is to start out a billionaire. And it often feels that way as an author, because you have to invest a lot of time and effort, whether you're going the traditionally published route or whether you're doing self-publishing or whether you're a hybrid author like me who does a bit of both. The traditional publishing route, of course, you have to write the book, pay someone to edit it because you really need it professionally edited, send it off to an agent, wait until an agent bites, and then the agent signs a contract with you, and they wait until Ed's Warehouse? No, not Ed's Warehouse. Honest Ed's Warehouse. That's it. Honest Ed's. I loved Honest Ed's. I'm so sad it's gone. Great place, cheap bargains, really cool store. So beautifully tacky. But to get back to the point, so as a traditionally published, of course, you're waiting for your agent to find a publisher who's going to buy your book. Then contracts have to be signed. You get paid an amount of money, and you may or may not pay out your advance. The advance is an advance against royalties, so you get paid that no matter what. And if the book makes more than that, you get paid more royalties. And as a self-published author, of course, all the expenses are yours. The bright side is you get paid a lot more per book, but you have to invest a lot more per book. So, for example, with a book sold on Amazon for $2.99, as this one is, which you've all bought, and thank you all so much, I really appreciate it. A $2.99 book, I get 70% royalty on, right? So 2 and change, I guess. Let's say $3, so minus 30, about $2.10 per book. So I get that every time a book is sold, but I have also dropped expenses into the book. And one of the biggest expenses as a self-published author is marketing. And this is where I've fallen down a bit this last year. I've been going through a bit of a tight spot financially and had to cut back on the marketing. Because the marketing is where you get people saying, hey, look at this shiny book. I can give you this book, The Trials of Aberystwyth, for free. All you have to do is give me your email. And now since I've got your email, do you want my next book and my next, right? And so we create that email chain. So for us, it's possible, but you have to have enough money to invest in the first place to get the people buying your book to first break even and then start making profits. So when you look at the Pattersons of the world, who is a brilliant marketer and a pretty decent author, and I'm not sure how many of his books he's still writing because he's so busy doing his marketing thing, he makes a great deal of money, but I also know that he invests something like $10,000 per month in marketing. Yeah. So yes, it is possible to make a living doing this. I am working on it. But it does take time and it does take money, especially as a self-published author. Otherwise, it takes a roof over your head and someone who cares enough for you to allow you the time to write. And I have all those things, and I'm incredibly grateful for them, because without them, I would not have written the 6 books that I've written. I would have not ghostwritten the 9 books that I've ghostwritten, which, by the way, paid me a great chunk of change. That's why I was ghostwriting. So I hope that answers your question in as long a manner as humanly possible. Hope you have a supportive patron. Well, I've been thinking about that. I have a very supportive wife, let me tell you that, and that makes a huge difference. And I've got to put out a huge shout out to my mom, who is the patron of this book, because as we all know, all of you who are subscribed to my newsletter, I lost my cover designer last year. They got themselves a full-time paying gig, apparently, and no longer wanted to live the hand-to-mouth freelance book designer life. And so I spent months finding a new cover designer, and then it was a matter of how much it costs, and I was running a bit short of funds, and talking with my mom about this, and she volunteered to pay for the cover of my books. So this is a wonderful bit of support. It's really helpful, and you've all seen the new book cover. It's absolutely amazing, and I really want to give a shout out to Philippe, who did my book covers. They look brilliant, and I really appreciate the work. So yeah, how did I come up with the character of Aberystwyth? That's a good question. It was I wanted to write something fun and different. And if you've read my first 3 books, Small Magics, Cold Magics, and True Magics, I tend to favor young adult protagonists, people who are on the cusp of adulthood. Our hero in that book was, of course, Thomas Flaherty. He's a young man who comes home from school and discovers that the world has changed. The pitch line for that book, in case you haven't bought it, is a young man who discovers magic in a world where no one believes it anymore, except for one person who was willing to kill to possess it all. It's a great pitch line. I'm really happy with that one. It took me months to figure out. So with Aberystwyth, I wanted to write again, a younger person sort of beginning their career, but I also wanted something different, and I wanted to explore writing a female protagonist. You got them all. Thank you, Leo. You're my hero. So yeah, I want to explore a female protagonist and see what it'd be like writing from her point of view, and I want to explore someone who didn't have what it takes to realize their first dream. And those of you who read the first book know that Abwith's dream was to become a knight of the exculpatory order. And those of you who haven't read the first book, well, if you're a subscriber, of course, you got it for free, and I hope you've read it, know that she didn't make it. And the story of how she didn't make it and how she became a stalker is a good bit of fun. So if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend that you do. And so, yeah, I wanted something. I wanted some sword fighting. I wanted some daring do and some magic because I love writing fantasy. I love writing books that begin with the suspension of disbelief, because you cannot involve yourself. You cannot enjoy a fantasy book unless you suspend your disbelief right at the beginning, and that allows for an amazing leeway in terms of how you can play with characters and play with words and worlds and all sorts of wonderful things. So that was part of it. My daughter was also part of the inspiration of Abwith. Abwith is, of course, queer. Maggie is out as queer, so I say this as something that's public knowledge. And so that was part of the inspiration for her. And I wanted a female protagonist that a young lady she was 14, I think, when I came up with the idea. I think 16 when I first published them, maybe 15. So she could read the books and go, "Oh, this is a cool character," right? So that was part of it too. And it seemed like a lot of fun to write murder mystery set in a fantasy world. So that was the last reason I did it. So that's how I came up with the character of Abby. And now I'm going to take a drink of wine. More questions. Keep them coming. Anyone? Anything? Anyone? Anyone?
Tired.
They're tired. They're tired. I've been talking for damn near an hour. That's right. I can talk for an hour. I love the sound of my own voice that much.
Did you answer the question about how you came up with the character about
I've been doing that for the last 10 minutes.
I didn't hear you because you're still delayed on my.
Katrina is listening on her laptop, which is unfortunately delayed. But yes, I did answer that question. I hope I answered it well. You must be an actor. Me? Never. I've never been an actor. Not according to my drama prof. Yeah, I miss acting some days. I miss being on stage because it's such a load of fun. I hope we can get back to it once I'm doing a little better in life and all that.
No one's commented on the squid yet.
Oh, Katrina is very sad that no one has commented on the squid yet. Someone quick, notice the squid. Notice
it's a hand-knit squid. Is it? It's adorable.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm waiting.
It's unique.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful, actually.
Yeah, it was hand-knit in Newfoundland.
That's wonderful.
Where we picked it up as a gift to ourselves because squid. Because who doesn't need a hand-knit squid hanging around their house? How important are props to writing and finding the grooves like swords, pistols, and squids? For me, that's a good question. I think for me, it's always been the idea comes first, and I build the world around this. I remember years ago, I had the pleasure to be on a panel with Ed Greenwood and several other authors who wrote game books, and so they start with the world and build the characters into the world. And I've been very fortunate that I start with the character and then build the world around them. But there were some props I did insist on. I wanted, and it's funny because I swore I'd never do gunpowder or fantasy. But I found myself wanting to move to a more advanced stage of fantasy, a more advanced technological world, because I can do some fun things with it. And in fact, book 5 is going to be directly involved in the technological changes that are from the squid jigging ground. That's exactly right, Mayas. Book 5 is going to be directly involved with the changes that are happening to the world with factories and the advent of the industrial age. So that's fine, but I've got to finish book 4 first. Shh! Don't tell anyone I'm not done book 4 yet. Shh! So in terms of props, once I have the idea, then I build the props of the world around it. So the Abwith sort of standard clothes of breeches and a jacket and a shirt, is her walking about clothes for her job, because it's a lot easier to move in pants than a dress. But if you remember book one, she shows up and all the city folks are wearing like loose trousers and shirts, and she's feeling very sort of bumpkinish because she's not dressed as the fashionable folks are. So yeah, knowing the props are what the props are help. And the big prop in book one, not in book one, sorry, and we have the prequel, and then we have book one, which is of course the wire noose. The big prop there was the wire noose, the way that our murders were being committed. So that was a very important thing. Often it's the monster that is the key in this book, and in the Dead Trees. It was very much about the miscreations. In the Dead Trees, of course, it's about the tree eaters, which bring our heroes to the. If you're cold, Mom, feel free to close up the door there. The tree eaters, which bring our heroes over to the valley where the mystery occurs. So I find props are useful to me, but I'm fortunate that I've played with a lot of swords. I've played with a lot of guns, everything from black powder to automatic weapons to occasionally rocket launchers, which is cool. So I have a good background on that, so I can put all those little bits and pieces together and make something neat. But it's very important to have my monitor frog. Okay, so once upon a time, back in the early aughts, before we all got flat screens, we all had the big monitors, in the 90s, and we had the big monitors, and they made these little frogs or little creatures that you could put on top of your monitor. So I have a monitor frog, which now balances on my laptop screen, and he helps me with my writing. That's it. I can hear my own voice echoing from the other room. Can anyone else? And Katrina's going to turn it down for us. Thanks, Katrina. So that sort of answers that question. Nope, no one else can hear it. And Leo says he can't, at least, so that's good. Yay, Leo. What other fun things can I tell you about? Any more questions or answers? Or does everyone need a 5 minutes like snack break and grab another drink break before we go on to the second reading? Or any questions? Anything? I'm all ears. You can tell from the haircut. See, giant ears. Yeah. No one's even asked about the haircut. And I went and got this haircut specifically for tonight, so I could look pretty for you all. So any more questions? Anyone? Bueller? I can never do that guy's voice. Bueller. I never get that voice right. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna pop on Twitter for 2 seconds and say, hey, I'm halfway through my book streaming. If you want to come, just hop on the link. So let's just do that quickly. I actually need to flee, get a kid to bed. Fair enough, Leo. Getting the kid to bed is the important thing. Glad to see more books are on the way. I'm very glad myself. It was a real rough year this year. I actually fell into a pretty deep depression, had to go back on my meds. Which is why this all actually managed to happen again. And in the last 3 months, I managed to recover and get this book out, because I swore I would get this book out in time for the holidays. So thanks very much for coming out and hanging out with us, Leo. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the wonderful blurb on the book, and have yourself a great night, and give your kid a hug from all of us too. Okay. So hang on a second. I'm just going to hit the share button, share a link on Twitter. And what shall I say on Twitter? Let's say halfway through the book launch and things are going swimmingly. Come join us! Exclamation mark. And there we go, and we'll send it on out. Tweet. And it has tweeted. Yay! Shall I share another one on Facebook? See if anyone sees that before we round up? As we wait for Facebook to load in. The polished party and things are going swimmingly. Never say I'm not original. or, have one original thought and repeat it twice. Come join us. And post to Facebook. There we go. All right, so we posted all the things we can post. There we go, there we go. Question for anyone out there, is WhatsApp worth the effort? I've been looking at the WhatsApp and wondering whether or not I should bother doing it. But it's another social media outlet that I've got to learn how to use. And TikTok. I've thought about TikTok, and it seems like you have to have, talent of some sort to be on that one. Or at least be interesting. And as we all know, I'm, stunningly interesting, I like to think. But not so interesting as I want to do TikTok. So anyone had experience with WhatsApp, with TikTok, with book stuff on that? Any thoughts on that, anyone? Anyone? No worries. Okay. Well, folks, it's 8:00. And I could be convinced to do the reading of chapter 2 if people are interested. But only if people are interested. I don't want to spoil it for folks. So let me know. Should I read chapter 2, show of hands? Or, thumbs. Thumbs are good. Richard says, go for it. And Kat says, book talk is fun, but I recommend you follow a few other writers and see how they do and what you're comfortable with. Yeah, I agree with that. I first have to get TikTok. Richard says, go for it for chapter 2. So I shall clear my whistle, wet my whistle, clear my throat, wet my throat, clear my whistle, whistle my throat, clear my, I don't know. Anyway. All right. I have had my sip of wine. Or 6. That's fine. I'm not as think as you drunk I am, officer. All right. When we last left our hero, a giant miscreation had bit a human being in half. Chapter 2. Sorry, I forgot. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin. The illusions vanished. Several people screamed. Parents hid their children's eyes and turned them away. Abwith stared, mouth falling open as Krondakaro's bottom half toppled over backwards. The creature reared up and roared loud enough to hurt Abwith's ears. It dropped to all four and charged forward, its body shimmering as it leapt off the stage and landed before the panicked crowd. Lysirith grabbed Abwith's whole shoulder and hauled her back as the creature spun, its claws lashing the air. The crowd scattered. One man fell and several people stepped on him as they ran away. The thing charged forward, knocking aside anyone in its way and running straight for the merchant maze. Abwith yanked herself free from Lysirith and chased after it. The beast crashed through the merchant maze. The music vanished, replaced by wood cracking and canvas tearing, glass crunching and metal clanging against the ground. Screams filled the air and people sprinted away. Abwith dodged them and increased her speed. The part of her brain worried about survivor told her this was a terrible idea, but Abwith ignored it. She reached the maze and stepped into chaos. The beast had left a trail of broken booths, angry magicians, and bruised customers. The magicians hurled small blazes of fire and sparks of lightning that scorched the beast but didn't slow it. One put a wall of ice in front of her booth, but the creature smashed through it as if it wasn't there, and then through 3 more booths before it broke free of the maze and ran toward the exit. The young mages greeting the crowd froze, but only for a moment. Then one yelled at everyone to get back, while the other raised a shaking arm. Flame erupted from his hand, but the beast charged through the fire and knocked him over without slowing down. New screams filled the air as the creature ran through the rain shield and into the crowd on the other side. Abwith followed it, the icy rain hitting her and obscuring her vision. For a moment, her foot hit something and it yelped in pain and she stumbled. Lysirith caught her with one hand and hauled her upright. All around, people pressed against the walls, horror on their faces. Parents crouched, shielding their children with their bodies. Several men and women lay sprawled on the ground. Beyond them, the creature dashed onto a side street, its enormous body hitting the wall as it turned. Abwith jumped over the fallen and kept running, splashing with each step and soaking her breeches above her boots. She slid at the alley entrance, recovered, and raced forward, dodging debris and puddles of filth. Elizabeth stayed right behind her. Ahead, a child shrieked, and a woman shouted in rage and fear. Abba swore and increased her pace. She burst from the alley to find a kneeling woman clutching a young girl. A basket lay on the ground near them, its cover and a dozen buns, offerings for the festival, lying in a puddle. "Where'd it go?" Aberwith demanded. It came toward Maisie," the woman babbled. "It came out of the alley and I threw my basket and..." She broke down in tears. A terrified shout came from around the corner. Aberwith ran towards it, Lisserith on her heels. They found a man cowering in a doorway and spotted the creature turning down another alley. A moment later, another man cried out, and a horse screamed in fear and anger. Aberwith raced down the alley and came out into a small square with a water pump in the center. A man with a covered two-wheel cart packed high with firewood stood near the pump, petting and talking in soothing tones to his trembling horse. "Where is it?" Aberwith demanded. "That thing jumped out and scared poor Liso here," said the man, his eyes wide, his hands shaking. "Thought he was going to break free." Aberwith raised her voice. "Tell us where it went!" The man pointed, and Aberwith ran. The streets took her to a five-way intersection. She skidded to a stop, peering down each street, but the beast was nowhere to be seen. Aberwith gasped in a breath and let out her frustration, fear, and anger boil out in a wordless shout that echoed wordless shout loud enough to echo off the buildings even through the pouring rain. "Abby?" Lisserith, her short hair plastered down over her forehead and her sharp features dripping with rain, stared at her, eyes wide. "Abby, what was that thing?" "A miscreation." Aberwith felt a tremor starting in her legs. "You all right?" "No, I'm not all right." Aberwith stomped her foot. "That thing bit someone in half in front of us, Liz. It tore through the festival and now it's loose in the city." Aberwith glared down the empty streets. "We need to go back. The city watch will summon Captain Martholio and the knights, and I need to report and find that thing. Abby!" Lisserith's hands landed on her shoulder. "Breathe, Abby." Aberwith heaved in a deep breath. Then a second. "You shouldn't have run after me, Liz. That thing could have killed you." "It could have killed you." "It's my job." "Well, mine too, remember?" "Not yet, it isn't. You should have stayed behind." "I couldn't." Lisserith fell silent a moment, and her next words came out barely audible over the rain. "I couldn't let anything happen to you." Oh, gods, Liz, what am I supposed to say to that? Aberwith heaved in another breath and turned down a different street. "This way, it's faster." Lisserith frowned. "You sure?" "Lieutenant Calliteeth made me memorize the city." Aberwith had spent a month staring at the city map, being sent out to find random streets. It was tedious and frustrating, and still far nicer than searching for a giant murderous beast in a deluge. "I'm sure." Aberwith took one last deep breath and started jogging. Lisserith ran beside her, their boots splashing in unison until they reached the festival entrance. No one lay on the ground anymore, though some sat in doorways, shaking. Aberwith saw one man limping, and others with scrapes and bruises, but no terrible wounds. People relived the moment among themselves, trying to understand what happened. All agreed the beast was larger than a bear. No one doubted it wasn't natural, and everyone thought they were lucky not to be hurt worse. "Miles has got to go. Bye, Miles. Thanks very much for coming out and really appreciate it. Have a great night yourself and happy holidays." No one doubted it wasn't natural, and everyone thought they were lucky not to be hurt worst. Most had fear in their voices. Aberwith slipped through the milling crowd. Lisserith right behind her. Several people glared as she excused herself and pushed forwards. Others didn't move, forcing her to go around. Ahead, 2 young magicians and 4 city watch members blocked the festival entrance. "The festival is temporarily closed," one magician called. "Please go home. We will announce when the festival reopens." "Not until you tell us what that thing was," a man demanded. "What if it starts hunting in the streets?" someone else shouted. "It nearly ran over my daughter. It knocked me down. What was it?" "Please go home," the young magician repeated. "The festival is closed." Aberwith reached the front and raised the token on her belt. "I'm a stalker. I was here when it happened. This woman witnessed it. Let us in, please. The magicians exchanged uncertain glances, but stepped aside. Someone shouted, "How come she gets to go in?" Boos rose from the crowd. The magicians waved Abwith and Lycerus through, and they stepped over the golden runes into the festival square. The magic dried them instantly, and both women sighed in relief. Halfway to the main stage, they saw the 4 knights surrounding the now empty-handed statue. Keir Rosalith was laying the scepter into a red, cloth-lined wooden box held by a second knight. The other 2 stood guard, swords in their hands. "What happened?" Rosalith called as they came closer. "Miscreation," Abowith said. "Big one. Killed a magician on stage." Rosalith shook her head, her expression tightening with anger. "Then I guess we're coming back as soon as we pack this away." At the stage, Abwith found a squad of city watch, fully armored with clubs in their hands, led by a broad-shouldered woman with Sergeant Pips on her shoulder. Her expression suggested she'd be more than happy to beat some sense into anyone who came near. Despite that, Abwith felt a wave of relief. "Sergeant Blinish," she called. "It's Assistant Stalker Abwith. Do you remember me? From when Councillor Wallando was murdered?" The sergeant's eyes narrowed. "I remember. Were you here when it happened?" "Yes, Sergeant. I need to get on the stage." Abwith looked past her to the illusionist's remains and felt her stomach churn in warning. The magician's robes no longer sparkled. His black boots no longer shone, and dark fluids spattered his clothes. Abwith felt her stomach rebelling. She looked away, thankful that the man had fallen backwards so she couldn't see the full injury. Abwith swallowed hard. "I need to examine what you need to do, Assistant Stalker," Sergeant Belinish said as she closed the distance between them, "is tell me what happened here. Now." The sergeant, Abwith remembered, was not pleased to see the stalkers last time either. Murder was usually the watch's business, Lieutenant Calateeth had said, unless it involved a miscreation, which it certainly did this time. "We were watching the magic show," Abwith said. "A beast jumped on the stage and bit him in half." "In a single bite?" The sergeant's eyebrows rose as her lips twisted in disgust. "That explains why it isn't more of a mess. What happened next?" "It jumped into the crowd." "Not possible." The sergeant shook her head. "They put barriers across the stage 10 years ago when one drunk magician fell off while making fire dance, injured 11 spectators. Magic can pass through, not anything living." "Then the barrier must be down." "Oh, it isn't, but feel free to check." The sergeant's tone said the opposite, but Abowith went anyway. A line of runes ran the length of the stage, and 10 feet beyond them lay Caronda Caro's half body. Abowith pushed the air above the stage where the creature jumped. Her hand slid away, blocked by an invisible force. She swore under her breath. "We should get Captain Marfolio." "Already sent for," said the sergeant, "along with the knights. What happened after it jumped into the crowd?" "It ran through the merchant maze and out of the square. We chased it, but lost it at the 5-way intersection. I need to examine the body." The sergeant's head tilted, her lips twisting into a smirk. "Fine, come with me." Abwith followed Sergeant Belinish, Lizareth trailing behind them. 3 younger magicians in grey robes, all looking pale and shaken, stood beside the stage. They moved aside for Belinish and Abwith to mount the stairs. Abwith stepped through the curtain and froze. The half-corpse lay on the stage where it had fallen. The wound that tore the man in half looked as clean as the path of an axe through firewood. His remaining guts spilled on the stage, blood and other darker fluids oozing out in a spreading puddle. Abwith's stomach churned. Her hands began shaking. She tried to force in a deep breath and got a nose full of stinking blood and ruptured bowels and a deep, thick stench of rotting flesh. "Oh, God!" Abwith's hand flew to her mouth. She gagged once, twice, and with no hope of stopping it, spun and jumped off the stage. Lizareth reached for her, concern in her eyes. Abwith shoved past her and made 3 more steps before she doubled over and threw up her lunch. "I must look stupid," Abwith thought, cringing, imagining Sergeant Belinish's reaction. "I'm a stalker. I shouldn't get sick from smelling a corpse." Her stomach, not caring for her feelings, heaved until nothing came up but bile. Abwith's ribs ached, and her legs felt ready to give up, but Lycereth's hand clenched her cloak between her shoulder blades, holding her up. Abwith breathed in a slow breath, thankful the stench no longer filled her nose. She straightened her trembling legs, then managed a shaky, "Thank you." "That bad?" Lycereth asked. "It's the smell. It stinks like he's been dead and lying in a sewer for a week." Stalker, one of the young magicians, a man with light brown skin and dark hair, cut close to his head, held out a handkerchief. A woman the same age hovered behind him, a cup in her hand. But behind them, a third, very short man was reaching for a shovel and a bucket. All had pale faces and trembled, ready to dash away or collapse. None looked towards the stage. Abwith, face burning with embarrassment, took the handkerchief and wiped her mouth. "Water," the woman held out the cup. We keep it backstage for the performers, and we'll clean that up. That's our job." She faltered, then added, "Besides, you're not the only one who got sick." "Thank you." Abwith rinsed out her mouth and spat, then swallowed the next mouthful. "You work at this stage?" The young man nodded. "There's stage left and right. I help in the dressing rooms." "Not surprised you threw up, magician," Sergeant Belinish said. "Thought you were made of tougher stuff, though, stalker. Now go wait out front till your captain gets here and take your friend with you." Abwith observed that Sergeant Belinish looked pale and had her own jaw clenched, but said nothing. Lycereth glared at the sergeant as the sergeant walked past, but she too kept quiet. The two women followed the sergeant out front and, with nothing else to do, waited. The time it took for Captain Marfolio to reach them felt far longer than it was. The people still stuck in the festival had stopped panicking, and their fear and confusion had turned to boredom and irritation. Several tried to ask questions, and several tried to peer onto the stage, but Sergeant Belina shooed them back. Others accosted the magicians, serving food and drink, demanding answers. At last, Captain Marfolio arrived, wearing a sword and pistols under his cloak and a grim expression on his face. Abwith met him halfway, Lycereth beside her. Marfolio looked them both over. "I take it you two were together when it happened?" "Yes, Captain," Abwith said, her face heating up for no reason at all. Lycereth looked away. "Observations." Abwith started describing how the beast attacked, but Captain Marfolio interrupted her with, "You didn't describe Crondicaro." "Sorry," Captain Abwith said. "Half of him is gone, so I didn't think there was a point." "Maybe, maybe not. Describe him anyway." Tall, though he was alone on stage, so it's hard to say how tall. Shoulder length, wavy, dark brown hair, worn loose, no beard, light brown skin, black boots and breeches, red robes, slim build, used a wand. The wand is still there, attached to part of his arm. "What bit him in half?" "I don't know." Alice shook her head. "It looked like a giant bear, but with green glowing eyes and red fur that had lightning running through it. Thick, long limbs, huge claws, big mouth and big teeth, and the mouth grew larger when it bit him in two. The thing roared and jumped into the audience. We chased it through the fair." "You gave chase without weapons or reinforcements?" Disapproval filled Captain Marfolio's voice. "I thought I could at least track it," Abwith explained. "I lost it at the five-corner intersection." "Anyone else attacked?" "It knocked some people over and went after a little girl, but stopped when her mom threw something at it." She described the chase and their return, cringed internally, and added, "I went up to see the body, and the smell made me sick. It stinks like it's been rotting for days. I got off the stage, but it happens," Captain Marfolio said, which didn't make Abwith feel at all better. "Are the magicians in charge of the stage still here?" "Yes, Captain." "Good." Marfolio looked grim. "We'll examine the body and then question them. Maybe they can explain how the giant beast killed someone at a busy festival with no one seeing it come in." Oh, look, that's the end of chapter 2. I do love a cliffhanger. So, end of chapter 2. Yay! And thank you, folks who stuck around for the evening. Really appreciate it. So Richard, you're still here. Katrina's still here. My mom is still here, and she's got the look on her face and says, "Oh dear Lord, I hope he stops talking soon. I'm getting tired."
I am tired, but I don't hope you stop talking.
So that's our readings for tonight. Any questions about the book? Any questions about anything? I live to answer your questions, no matter how silly, how obvious, how whatever. So anyone got anything for me? Otherwise, I can natter on for a bit longer, or if we're, getting tired and want to call it a night, we can call it a night too. Both work fine for me. How are folks doing out there? I'll have a drink while you type masterfully your replies. Anyone? I will say, and I actually say this in the afterword of the book. I realized that this Abowith book was going to come out during the holidays, and this was the holidays a year ago that it was supposed to come out. And then my cover artist retired, and then life changed, and I got busy. And as we all know, it took a long time for this book to reach you, all of you, for which I do apologize. But hey, it's there now. What inspired you about the festival? Why did you pick? What did you pick from Midwinter festivals? Well, I was just talking about that. Because the book came out for the holidays, of course, I had to create a holiday for Abowith and for the folks at Abrania Talk. And I decided on the Midwinter Festival for two things. First, because, of course, the last books had happened during the summer, and this was happening near the holidays, near midwinter here in Canada. Of course, if you're here from Australia, and if you are, hey, yay, welcome. It's midsummer there. But for midwinter, it was really about darkness and light for me, the middle of the winter, that whole, and I do admit to a bit of inspiring from Halfway Through the Darkness. Anyone yet guessed where that quote comes from? No, if you haven't, I'll. If anyone wants to put a guess up, go ahead, and then I'll tell you at the end of it. At the end of this answer. So the return of light is the return of hope. It's the return of the summer and everything else. And I really thought, we have sort of the god of death as the god of midwinter, the time where everything is gone, it's dark, and everything's dead and still and cold, covers the ground. And I thought the goddess of magic as that spark of light that comes up and makes everything exciting. So as the winter closes, the light comes up and you have this spark of magic. And so that's what inspired me. So I got a bit from solstice festivals and the idea of the coming of the light, a bit from the habit, of course, of Christmas lights and Hanukkah candles and, lights for Kwanzaa and all these things. And Diwali's festival of lights, the idea of bringing light back into the world in the middle of darkness is a lot of what inspired the festival. And part of the Festival of Magic, as we discover, and those of you who read book one know something about Abowith and her relationship with magic and how that's affecting her relationships in this book. And that was important too. So it gave me a chance to explore that as well. So that's what I picked from Midwinter festivals, and that's why I picked the Midwinter Festival to be a festival of magic. And also because it's, a chance to put something in the middle of rain and continuous darkness and cold and play with the way the elements affect the mind and the elements affect the body and how tired one gets when one is constantly running and working through all of this. So last chance to guess, anyone out there, where is the quote from? Halfway Through the Darkness. Anyone? Richard? Mum? All the other hundreds of folks who are silently watching this, I'm sure. Bueller? Where's Bueller? Seasick? Yes, I go back to the same gag 3 times because 3 things are funny in 3s. And 15s, apparently. And 45s, but it has to be a really good gag. So the quote, Halfway Through the Darkness, last chance. No, Katrina, who will put this up on a delay because her feed is slightly delayed. Where is the quote, Halfway Through the Darkness from? Drum roll. Long drum roll while she types.
Just getting that. Doctor Who.
Doctor Who, that is correct. It was from one of the Doctor Who's, one of the Matt Smith Doctor Who Christmas specials. It's always been my favorite quote about this time of year. Halfway through the darkness, halfway to the light. So there we are. Any more questions? Anyone? Anything? Has everyone got a glass? If you have a glass, I'd like to raise a toast to everyone who's made it this far. We're heading for 8:30, and things have sort of calmed down. I'm not seeing a huge number of folks online tonight, so I'm. Yeah. Katrina's sound delay is about 30 seconds behind, apparently. So I'll have to remember that if I ask her another question. She actually had to run out here and yell the answer rather than type it in. So let's raise a glass, not our first or last, and come join me in this toast to quote Great Big C. To all of you, my readers, the few, the proud, the many. How many Abowitz books are you planning? That's an excellent question, Richard. I will finish my toast and then I will answer it. To all of you who read my books, who make writing them worthwhile. I love having readers. I love sharing stories with people. I love seeing people react to my stories. I've got someone who contacted me recently who I'm going to go see in person next week. They live in Toronto. And they contacted me because they read my first book literally to pieces. And have asked me for another copy. So I'm going to deliver one to them. And that's going to be great fun. You readers make it worthwhile being a writer. So thank you. Here's to all of you. A toast to you all. I shall take a sip and then I shall answer the question. How many Abowitz books am I planning? At least 5, up to 25. There are 2 more books. One which is written, one which is almost written. Shh! Don't tell people it's not done yet. One which is almost written, and one which I have got the idea for, the concept for, but I've got to write the plot out and all that stuff with. And there will be 2 more books in Abowitz as an assistant stalker. And these will be, the Stalker's Chronicles, Stalker's Assistant will be the first 5 books. And when those 5 books are done, I will, and this is a big secret for all of you, first time I'm mentioning this, I will be releasing all 5 in paperback. So hopefully by the middle of next year, we'll have all 5 of Abowitz's first books in paperback as well as ebooks. So that's my big plan anyway. Fingers crossed that it works. All the fingers crossed. There we go. So all the fingers crossed that will work. And then there will, of course, be Abowitz as a stalker. And then I think the ones after sort of 5 books of Abowitz as a stalker. I have an image of 5 books as Stalker Abroad, where Abowitz and the stalkers are outside of their own country. So in addition to being places outside of Abranian talk, we get to visit other cultures, working for their government, doing various things. Some more nefarious than others, which might be fun. Wahaha. And then, of course, Abowitz will be getting older as the books go forward. We have her relationship with Lisrith or whoever she ends up dating by book 9, if those 2 don't stick together, and I haven't decided whether they will or not. But aren't they a cute couple? I like them so much. Hopefully they'll last. And then, of course, as she gets older, gets promoted, and onward through Abowitz's life. So ideally, in my world where I managed to do it, I would love to write 25 little Abowitz novellas for everyone while I'm writing other books and working and producing other things. So that would be my fine thing. But there will be at least 5 Abowitz books, at least 2 more. The current one, I will tell you the title of the current Abowitz book I'm writing. Are you ready? The current title is Working Title. Yeah, that's right. I haven't thought of the title yet. I usually do that last. The Trials of Abowitz, the title came actually to me first, which was nice. Wire News, same. The Dead Trees took me a while to come up with that one because I wasn't sure if that was enough, but it worked in the context. And this one, of course, A Festival of Magic. Hey, we have a festival and it's magic. So that was great. And so this one, I've got to figure out what would be the key image. And, as my wife so gently calls them, giant killer lobsters, is probably not a good title for the book, though it is fun. So I hope that answers your question, Richard. Yeah. And that's it. Anything else? Anyone got any cool thoughts, great ideas, or anything they'd like to hear about, anything they'd like to do, anything they'd like to sing? Do we have a Christmas carol we would like to sing? Not that I know that many Christmas carols. It's really sad. Anyone? Not doing the Bueller joke because we've already done the joke 3 times. If you do it 4 times, it's not actually funny. Not me. It's just a rule. Let's see what else we got. I think that's it.
Okay.
And I think we're kind of at the end tonight, Richard. I think, and Katrina and everyone else who's hanging on, all 800,752 viewers that I'm sure I have somewhere out there who are sitting silently watching the screen without participating. I'm allowed to dream. I am. But I think I'm going to call it a night. Richard, Miles, Leo, Katrina, my mom, everyone who has directly participated, thank you so much for being interactive. I really appreciate it. Good read. Oh, thank you, Katrina. I'm glad you liked it. Thank you so much for being active and participating. To quote, oh God, what's the TV show? So glad you're out there because it'd be pretty stupid being in here if you weren't. So glad that you're out there. So glad that you like reading my books, and so looking forward to writing the next one. And I promise the next book we're going to get a lot more lead time in terms of promotions and all these other things. As I said, it was I was heavy in depression a lot of this year, and this process ended up being a lot more rushed. So I have lots of lead time, plenty of advertising. I'm hoping to get people out reading the book, so we can have a big crowd at the next launch, and ideally, maybe even an in-person crowd if we can manage it. We'll see what the budget's like. Anyway, I'm going to sign off for the night. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Thank you so much for buying my books. It makes a huge difference to me. And if you're here, if you enjoy the books, I would really love it if you would take the time to leave a review. Reviews make all the difference in the world, especially to independent authors like me. So thank you very much. All my love. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Joyous Yule. Happy Kwanzaa and the hundreds of joyous Diwali and all the other wonderful holidays that are out there this time of year. Enjoy them all. Love to everyone. Have a great night. It was so good talking to you, and we'll see you for the next one. Good night, folks.